From News Channel 9, your local election headquarters. This is a debate in the race for Congress in Central New York's 24th District. Incumbent Republican John Katko and Democratic challenger Dana Balter. Here now is your moderator, News Channel 9's Dan Cummings.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the final debate in that red-hot race for Congress in the 24th District. This one was close 2 years ago, and if the new independent poll done by Siena College for Syracuse.com reflects reality, the rematch this year is even closer. Matter of fact, it couldn't be any closer. It's a dead heat between these two with only 4% undecided. The 24th covers all of Onondaga, Cayuga, and Wayne counties, and roughly the western half of Oswego County, including the cities of Oswego and Fulton. Now, in Onondaga County alone, we already know over 60,000 absentee ballots, well over 60,000 have been requested, well over half of them have already been returned. Throughout the district, early in-person voting is drawing thousands to the polling places every day, now just over a week before Election Day itself. And so we welcome the candidates to the debate. Republican incumbent John Katko, seeking his fourth term in office, and for the second time in as many elections, the Democratic challenger Dana Balter. The candidates will each have 60 seconds to answer each of my new questions, and then we'll have time for open-ended rebuttal. We did a draw just a few minutes ago, and by virtue of that draw, the first question will be answered by Dana Balter. I want to talk a little more about that poll, Ms. Balter. It's 45-45 between the two of you, 4% undecided, but 5% told the pollsters Steve Williams is my favorite candidate. We know that his name is on the Working Families Party line. He couldn't get it off. He's only a placeholder, says he supports you. But Working Families left his name on the ballot. It's there. There's nothing they could do about it. Voting is underway. Election day is just around the corner. 5% have told these pollsters he's their guy. Well, it occurs to me that if you add that 5% to the 4% who say they're undecided, we've got 9% who are truly undecided right now, perhaps. And I'm thinking that may be because that 9% has been so turned off by all of the negative advertising, the television ads in this race, that they're saying maybe a pox on both your houses. So, since it's that 9% that will probably decide this race between now and who knows when in November, when they count all the votes, what do you say to them right now, those that are on the fence? How do you get them off the fence? Everyone else seems to have decided, 45-45. What's your pitch to the undecided?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and for hosting this debate. Congressman Katko, thank you for participating. And thanks all of you for watching. The conversation couldn't be more important. My pitch to the voters who are still deciding is my same as the pitch to the voters who have already decided, and that is that the stakes of this election are incredibly high, and we need somebody in Congress who is going to be a champion for the hardworking families of Central and Western New York. And I'm the person that you can count on to do that because my story is your story. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck. I know what it's like to not be able to find insurance because of a pre-existing condition and to face mounting medical debt and have no idea how you're going to get out from under it. I want to serve in Congress to make sure that no one in our district has to face those challenges. That's why I've been endorsed by the Working Families Party, who is a champion for working families. That's why Steve Williams has endorsed me. That's why I've been endorsed by this region's most trusted leaders, Barack Obama and Joe Biden. They know that what Central and Western New Yorkers need is someone who's going to be on their side always, and that's what I will do in Congress.
Mr. Katko.
Thank you, and thank you again for having me here. And Dana, it's good to see you again. If Joe Biden wins, which is likely, you'll need members of Congress like John Katko to work the middle, maintain the center of the Congress as we emerge from these dark times. Those are not my words. Those are the words from the Syracuse Post-Standard in endorsing me. And they endorse me because they know that I work across the aisle. They endorse me, they know I work at the other side. They endorse me because they know I'm the second most bipartisan member of all of Congress and that I routinely deliver. They also endorse me because they know that the Problem Solvers Caucus, which I'm a member of, which is 25 Republicans and 25 Democrats, I work with them routinely across the aisle, day in and day out, to advance causes of mutual interest. We don't need someone from the far left in this district. The Syracuse Post-Standard and the Auburn paper also said that I am the one that better represents this district. They said it last time when we ran against each other, and they're saying it again now. So I think I've earned the right for another term. I ask you to support me, and those undecided out there, keep in mind, I will work with everybody, including President Biden, if he makes it in.
All right, well, this next question starts with Mr. Katko. You've just mentioned Mr. Biden's win in the presidential race is likely. We'll find that out in a few weeks, I guess. But 4 years ago, you couldn't bring yourself to vote for Donald Trump. You wrote in Nikki Haley's name. This year, you've endorsed President Trump for re-election. You made that endorsement in January based largely, you said at the time, on the economy and trade, those policies. A month later, the pandemic hits, and the president has been hit hard himself, criticized stiffly in many quarters for his leadership or lack thereof on this particular issue, on the spread of the virus. You said this week in an earlier debate you think he's done okay on COVID-19. Looking only at how Mr. Trump and his administration have handled the pandemic, do you still, on balance, think Mr. Trump deserves another term?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. It's not so much about the president. He has a lot of warts, and I've routinely called him out on those. There's no question about that. But it's not so much about President Trump and what he has done and what he hasn't done. Of course, you factor that in the mix. It's where we're going as a country. And I think the newspapers that endorsed me kept that in mind in the endorsement. Are we going to go to Medicare for all like my opponent wants and like the far left wants? Do we want more taxes that are going to crush this economy coming out of a pandemic? Those are the types of things that I'm looking for, and that's what I know if President Trump is in, we can at least prevent that from happening. 90% of the businesses in New York State are small businesses, at least 90%. Raising taxes on them would crush those businesses and would crush the economic revival we've had. There's no question, before the pandemic hit, we had some of the greatest economic growth we've ever had in this country for African Americans and Hispanics, record low unemployment. And for women, record low unemployment. We want to get back to those times, and if we raise taxes and we go to Medicare for all like my opponent wants and what the far left wants, that's what we're going to be stuck with. So that's why I'm sticking with them.
Ms. Balter.
So you notice the congressman avoided the main part of the question, which was about the pandemic. The fact of the matter is Donald Trump has botched the response to this pandemic from top to bottom. Because of his failed leadership, more than 220,000 Americans are dead, more than 8 million are sick, more than 12 million are still out of work, and more than 100,000 small businesses have closed. It's getting worse, not better, because this president refuses to stand up a national plan to address it. This is the worst crisis our country has faced in 100 years, and our president is making it worse. That's the man John Katko endorses. And the economic success that he uses as his justification for the endorsement didn't come from Donald Trump's policies. It didn't come from John Katko's tax vote. It was inherited from the Obama-Biden administration. What John Katko and Donald Trump's tax plan did was give $750 billion to the corporations that bankrolled John Katko's campaign, added $2 trillion to our debt, and put Medicare and Social Security on the chopping block. John Katko is not fighting for what's best for Central and Western New Yorkers.
Sure. Listen, that's just not true. During the Obama-Biden administration, we limped along from the recovery from 2008 at a meager 1% to 2% growth rate a year. When we cut the taxes, the economy boomed. I would ask African Americans in the Hispanic community and women who gained 74% of the jobs in the 2 years leading up to the pandemic, whether or not those tax reforms were working. I'd ask the small businesses who were booming. I would ask the country as a whole that was booming, and we were getting our trade back from overseas and unfair trade deals. That's the fact of what was happening under the Obama administration. Those things weren't happening. The tax reform worked, and the bottom line is she is absolutely going to raise our taxes, and then she's going to kill us with a knockout punch with Medicare for all, period.
Again, the congressman's analysis is flat out wrong, and I'm going to trust the economists as opposed to Congressman Katko, who's bankrolled by the corporations that benefited from that tax bill. The growth was inherited from the Obama-Biden administration, and the policies that the congressman is referring to under Donald Trump have hurt our district. You don't have to do more than talk to a farmer here to find out how devastating the trade war was. Talk to a small business owner who was devastated by that. Talk to the call center workers in Syracuse, where their jobs were shipped out of state because of the tax bill that John Katko voted for. We are talking about investing in working families, and I have made it clear over and over again, though he refuses to acknowledge it, that I stand with Joe Biden in a plan to cut your taxes if you make less than $400,000 a year. The only people whose taxes we are planning to raise are the wealthy and corporations, to make sure that they finally pay their fair share.
I want to go around one more time on this,
Sure.
but be specific in asking. You clearly have your differences on the economy and how to address it going forward. On the pandemic, Mr. Katko, I want to make sure that I understand. You are in favor of most of Mr. Trump's tax policies, trade policies. On the economy, you're giving him thumbs up, and you've endorsed him for another term. You don't believe that his performance on the pandemic has in any way outweighed the economy. On balance, you still are okay with his handling of COVID-19 and think that his performance on the economy gives him another
Yeah, I'm not
chance.
okay with his handling of the pandemic. I think he was way too slow out of the gate to recognize the seriousness of it, even though it cut down travel from China. And he was way too late to get the personal protective equipment to the front lines and funding for the hospitals. Those things are a fact. But on balance, we're talking about a fundamental directional change in our country. And Dana Balter wants Medicare for all. She's been in the tank for that since the beginning. And that, according to Bernie Sanders, would raise $30 trillion in taxes. Joe Biden calls it preposterous, and he called it a massive tax on the middle class. And by the way, when she says $400,000 is a tax cut for the wealthy, she ought to talk to the small businessmen and women who provide the lifeblood of Central New York's jobs around here and ask them if they're wealthy, and ask them if they're not providing jobs and struggling in this economy. And instead of trying to help them come out of the economy, she's going to have the knockout punch of raising taxes. That's not how you get yourself out of the economy. And that's why I've been endorsed by the major newspapers, because they know I can lead you out of this economy. And you can't do it by taxing people when they're down and out. It's like punching someone when they're down on the mat.
You get the last word on this particular round, Ms. Balter.
So again, he's avoided the main question, which is about the pandemic. And I will remind you, 220,000 dead Americans, 8 million sick, more than 12 million out of work. And it's not just that Donald Trump was late out of the gate. He was pathetically late out of the gate. The problem is we are 9 months into this crisis and he still doesn't have a plan. He is still discouraging people from wearing masks. He still is refusing to stand up a national testing and tracing program. He is doing nothing to get the spread of this virus under control. In fact, he's actively spreading it by taking his entourage around the country for massive rallies. We are talking about the survival of American people. We are talking about your families and your loved ones who are sick and dying. That is not a president who deserves re-election. We need to put a man in office who is going to put the well-being, the lives, and the livelihoods of Americans first. And if the congressman can't see the difference, he doesn't belong in office.
We've got to take one 60-second break, our first break. It'll be brief, and we'll be back in 1 minute. Don't go away. Welcome back, everybody. Dan Cummings here in our debate for the 24th Congressional District seat. I want to direct this next question to Dana Balter. That same Siena College poll done for Syracuse.com that was released just today shows a dead heat between the two of you, 45-45, 4% undecided, 5% right now saying Mr. Williams. But that same poll asked about presidential preferences, and it showed that while the two of you were tied, Mr. Biden leads Mr. Trump 53 to 39% in this district. That's worth considering all by itself. My question to you is, should the voters of the 24th be actually treating this election as a referendum on the President Trump and his leadership? How much of that are you encouraging? Should this election between the two of you, should it be a referendum on President Trump's 4 years in office?
Well, I think the election should be about whatever most concerns voters. That's what they get to do when they show up to the ballot box or use mail-in voting, is decide what matters to them. And part of that is presidential leadership. There's no doubt, as I've said, Donald Trump is the most dangerous and corrupt president of our lifetime, and is making us less safe with every passing week. And it says a lot about the congressman's judgment that he chooses to endorse him. And that's what this race is about. It's about who is going to best represent you in Congress, whose judgment do you trust, who is going to be a champion for you. And I think I have made the case that I will always be fighting on the side of working families of Central and Western New York. That's why I don't take a dime of corporate PAC money. The congressman has taken millions from wealthy interests who are not the same as Central and Western New Yorkers. And that's why we see him cast vote after vote on taxes, on health care, on the environment that benefit his corporate donors instead of us.
Mr. Katko.
Sure. I mean, 14% of the people that are voting for Joe Biden in that Siena poll are voting for me. And that tells you they're rejecting her unbelievable attempts to try and make this election all about Donald Trump. I'm not Donald Trump, and people know that. And that's why 14% of the people that are voting for Biden are voting for me. And that's why this race is close. She desperately wants this to be a referendum on a president and a president only. She even has these commercials where she tries to splice photos of me and Donald Trump together because I've never even had a photo with him. I am an independent individual, and I'm recognized as such, and my voters routinely reward me as such for doing that. This is the toughest district in the country for a Republican to hold, and I understand that. And that's why I routinely vote in a bipartisan manner. I'm the second most bipartisan member in all of Congress, more than any other Democrat and all the Republicans. So of course, she wants to make this about the president. Again, I'm not Donald Trump, I'm John Katko, and I'm running in this district. He's not. She desperately wants you to think otherwise. Don't fall for it. And I know a lot of you already are showing me that you're not falling for it, and I appreciate that.
I want to direct this next question to you, Mr. Katko, because it broadens this out into philosophy, because you have actually said in previous debates and previous published comments that you think personalities, whether it's Mr. Trump's personality, which has come under heavy criticism for his leadership and so forth, that should be less important than philosophy in this race for the White House. And that's why you support Mr. Trump. Mr. Biden and Ms. Balter would take the country too far left, you say. Mr. Trump's reelection, you say, would be better because you share most of his philosophy about taxes and trade and other issues. But what a president says and how he says it also matters, and Mr. Trump's critics are nearly unanimous in saying that he has debased the office of the presidency itself by the manner in which he has conducted himself publicly. The personality part of it, not the philosophy part of it. So on balance, are you convinced that political philosophy should take precedence over all other qualities of leadership?
No, not at all. I think it always depends on the total mix of events, right? So if you look at what we've been able to accomplish since he's been in office, tax reform, right, that transformed this economy. Don't forget, when he came in office, he inherited from Biden and Obama a Middle East that was in complete turmoil. They were cutting off the heads of Americans on live TV, and ISIS had a caliphate. That was gone in a year. He said he was going to fix the trade deals. He did. He said he was going to make the economy boom. He did. Everything was going great until the pandemic hit. The problem that makes this difficult for someone like me to support him is because of the rhetoric. And of course you have to take that into consideration. But I'm thinking about my children's and my children's children. And I always say to people, I think the day after the election, if Joe Biden wins, everyone will be like, great, he's a nicer guy. Of course he is. And if it was a personality contest, I'd vote for him too, because I like him. He is a good person. But the day after the election, or 2 days after the election, when you start hearing about all the policies that the Democrats and the far left, like my opponent, want to do, you're going to sit there and say, oh my God, what have we done? So you have to take it all into consideration.
Thank you. Ms. Balter?
Yeah, so it's not just about personality, and every time Congressman Katko tries to make the problem of Donald Trump just about personality, he diminishes the real damage that this president has done to our country, which I have outlined many times already in this debate. That is the 6th time, I believe, that he has used the term far left, trying to scare you about who I am. But one thing we agree on is it is about the direction the country is going, and that's why I'm asking you to vote for me, because I am going to work on policy with a President Joe Biden that puts hardworking families first, not the trade policies that John Katko supports that have caused so much damage to our farmers and small businesses, not the tax policy that John Katko supports that gives all the benefits to the wealthy and leaves the rest of us behind and jeopardizes Social Security and Medicare, not the foreign policy that John Katko and Donald Trump embrace that distances us from our allies and cozies up to dictators. I'm talking about putting the needs of Central and Western New Yorkers first. The policies that I support are supported by the vast majority of people in this district, and together we're going to work to put you first.
I may respond briefly. Yeah, she mentions far left. Listen, it's true. Listen, I embrace the middle. She embraces the far left. I respect her because she does do that. And she touted being endorsed by the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. That's Elizabeth Warren. She was proud to announce Elizabeth Warren endorsed her. That's fine, and I respect her. She was warned 2 years ago when she didn't get the endorsements of the media outlets that she's too far left for this district. And she hasn't changed. So it's not just me saying that, that's just a fact. And that's why the 2 major newspapers are telling you that I'm the better choice because I'm the moderate. And I admire her because she really believes in her far left policies, and God bless her for that. That just doesn't fit this district.
So I need to respond to this again. Let's talk about the things that I'm fighting for. These are progressive policies, and progressive policies are supported by the majority of people in this district and this country. We are talking about universal health care, which is supported by 63% of voters. We're talking about a $15 minimum wage, which is supported by 68% of voters. We're talking about supporting Roe v. Wade to maintain legal access to safe abortion, supported by 76% of voters. And we're talking about universal background checks for gun purchases, supported by 97% of voters. These are not just majority positions, they are supermajority positions. Congressman Katko has been masquerading as a moderate for years. The fact of the matter is, the things I'm fighting for are what the majority of voters want. The things that he is voting for are the things that a small minority want.
If I may just brief for 15 seconds?
Yeah.
Sure. Joe Biden called Medicare for all preposterous. And it's a fact when you poll those people. Yeah, first they say, sure, we love health care for everybody. Then you say, well, do you realize it's going to double your taxes? They're like, well, wait a minute here. Say, well, do you realize it's going to take away health care the way you know it now? And it's going to change health care for retirees? Like, well, hey, hang on a second. I didn't know that. And all of a sudden, you start peeling back the onion, the numbers, the support for that goes way down. So the professor can cite any statistics she wants, but the bottom line is that when you look at the real thing, they're going to wake up the day after election and go, oh my God.
As always, if you lie to people about the policies, you're going to reduce their support. When you're honest and tell them it's about getting them access to health care and lowering costs for 95% of households and cutting national costs by $2 trillion, they're in favor of it. And that's why Joe Biden, in his endorsement of me, cited my championing health care for everybody as one of the reasons that he decided to make me the very first House candidate in the entire country that he endorsed. Health care is serious, and we should tell people the truth about it.
We're going to talk more about health care in our second half hour, but this next question goes to you, and it follows directly from our current discussion, Ms. Balter. There are independent measures of bipartisanship, and by most of those measures, Mr. Katko measures up quite well when you examine the votes and his body of work in Congress. How can you assure the voters that if you're elected to what will almost certainly be a continued Democratic majority in the House, that you as a freshman member, even of the Democratic majority, will be able or willing to reach across the aisle? How can you assure the voters that you can attain the same level of bipartisanship?
Great question, and I talk to voters about this all the time. First of all, I want to be clear about the measures of bipartisanship you're talking about. The congressman has really learned how to play the game in the 6 years that he's been in Washington. He's very good at taking show votes against the president to boost his bipartisan credibility. But the fact is, on the issues that affect our lives the most, on health care, on taxes, on a woman's reproductive freedom, on gun safety, he falls right in line with his party. My promise to the voters is not to care about partisanship. The people that I care about, the people that I will be serving, are you, the 700,000 plus people who live in this district. I am going to start every day asking a very simple question. Is this better for Central and Western New Yorkers? And if it is, I will support it. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter who the party leadership is. And let me tell you something. When it comes time to getting out of this pandemic, to revitalizing our economy, what Central and Western New Yorkers need is somebody who's going to be in the congressional majority. Because that's somebody who's going to be able to get the work done.
Thank you.
Don't believe what she's saying, folks. 14% of the people who have already voted, or 14% of the people in the Siena poll that are voting for Biden are voting for me. 1% of the people that are voting for Trump are voting for her. That is the biggest signal you need to know that even the voters don't believe what she's saying. She is a far-left candidate. She touts her far-left credentials, and she wants it her way or the highway. Let me give you a good example. The Problem Solvers Caucus, which I'm a member of, 25 Democrats and 25 Republicans, came up with a health care bill, a COVID relief package, that was forced the narrative and is the only reason we're still even having COVID talks right now. And within an hour of that package coming out, 50 of us stood in front of the Capitol proud that we're bucking our parties and proud that we're forcing the narrative. Within 1 hour, she panned it and she said, we need to go for the partisan bill that even Anthony Brindisi doesn't want. So the bottom line is, she is a partisan, and it's okay. I respect her. I respect the fact that she's part of the far left, and I respect the fact that she boasts her support from the Elizabeth Warrens of the world. And she even put up for her idol in Congress is Katie Porter, who is a far left progressive.
Thank you.
It's okay that she's a far left. She just got to admit it to you guys, that's what she is.
Thank you.
Congressman, repeating a lie over and over again just doesn't make it true. The voters see through it. The bill that the congressman is talking about COVID relief, was a bill that he knew was going nowhere, that is woefully inadequate in addressing our challenges, and he voted against, not once, but twice, the actual bill in Congress that was going to meet our needs, that was going to bring the relief to our communities, to our governments that we needed. He dismisses it as a partisan messaging bill. You can't be bipartisan if you dismiss everything you disagree with as partisan. And this man had no problem voting for a partisan bill when his party was in control of Congress. The tax bill that he so proudly touts did not get a single Democratic vote, and in fact 12 Republicans voted against it, including 5 of the congressman's New York Republican colleagues. Why? Because they knew that bill was bad for New Yorkers. They knew it was going to raise our taxes. They knew it was giving an extra dose of pain to us. But this man voted for it. He has no problem with partisanship when it meets his needs, but he is unwilling to fight for the things that make our lives better.
Thank you. Listen, again, she hasn't denied anything I've said about her proudly being a progressive, and that's okay. That's fine. But the bottom line is, I'm the second most bipartisan member of all of Congress. The bipartisan, completely independent Lugar Center at Georgetown University said, I am more likely than every single Democrat in Congress and all but one Republican to cross the line and work with the other side, and the other side is most likely to work with me than almost anybody else in Congress. You can say what you want, you can try and deflect all you want and cite all these statistics and bills, but that's the key statistic, and that's why the papers have both said to me that the reason I am here is because, and that they're supporting me, is because I am much more moderate and you are much more to the left. That's a fact.
We've got to take a break. It's only a 2-minute break, so don't go far. 120 seconds, and we'll be right back with more of the debate in the 24th Congressional District race. Welcome back, everybody. Dan Cummings here as we continue our debate in the race for Congress in Central New York's 24th Congressional District. Our next question will begin with Congressman John Katko. Mr. Katko, you have stood firm against repeal of the Affordable Care Act unless or until there's something better to replace it. But your vote on the 2017 tax bill effectively removed the individual mandate, which the ACA really depends on for its effectiveness. Supreme Court may have to decide that now, we'll see. But what is the answer to reforming the ACA? In other words, what now?
Sure, I want to reform the ACA, and I've stood up to my party and my president's desire to repeal the Affordable Care Act. In fact, I was with John McCain and the others who helped stop the repeal of the Affordable Care Act, and I'm very proud of that. My opponent will keep trying to tell you that I didn't, but I did, and that's just a fact, and I've stood up for it again in Congress and for pre-existing conditions. We need to do two things. First of all, before I say that, I also want to say my opponent really probably is hoping that the Affordable Care Act gets repealed because she can then slip in her Medicare for All plan, and that's just not what our country needs. I think we need to do two things. We need to keep the cost of health care down, interstate competition, medical malpractice reform, prescription drug price reform, and funding high-risk individuals in a specialized pool. We also need to cut down on the cost of out-of-pocket expenses, increase contributions we can make to healthcare savings accounts, and also dramatically increase the deductions we can take for medical expenses that are out of the ordinary. I think we do all those things together, we can really make it work. And of course, overlaying with all that, we need to have continue to put the billions and billions of dollars into research that we have done through the 21st Century Cures Act to find cures for things like Alzheimer's, which my father passed away from.
Thank
you.
And
you do those things all together, and we're going to be in good shape.
Ms. Balter?
So again, you notice the congressman avoided the main part of the question, which asked him to justify his vote on the tax bill, which gutted the ACA. That vote is why the ACA is now in front of the Supreme Court, and we're likely to see it struck down. For him to pretend he's done anything other than talk about repealing it as soon as this mystery plan is ready is just disingenuous. And what he's offering now as a plan, not really a plan, but the basic things he's outlined, will take us back to pre-ACA days when people with pre-existing conditions are at risk. That's why we had the ACA in the first place. I also want to make this point, because he's now said this several times in debates. To suggest that I want to get rid of the ACA is a gross misrepresentation of my position. Not only have I clearly stated from day one that I want to protect and strengthen the ACA, and I will fight back against his and Donald Trump's attempts to get rid of it, but it also undermines the fight that we have for people with pre-existing conditions. I have told you my story. I have a pre-existing condition. 300,000 people in this district do. My sister has cancer, and she depends on the ACA for her health insurance. For you to suggest that I would do anything to take that away, and for you to be dishonest about your efforts to undermine it, is appalling.
Well, I'll be happy to respond to that. You do want to replace the ACA with Medicare for all. That's what you've said. That's what you've been saying. She was saying this when she used to protest outside my office, walking in circles with her friends, banging on drums, talking about Medicare for all. That is the replacement. And I'm not saying that she's against pre-existing conditions. Of course she's not. She's a champion of it, and I respect her for that. But she does want to replace the Affordable Care Act with Medicare for all. She wants every child born into this country from heretofore going forward to go on Medicare for all. Joe Biden says that's preposterous. Joe Biden says that would cause a big middle tax increase. And Bernie Sanders said that's right, it'd be a big fat tax increase. And so I am just telling the truth. I have stood up for the Affordable Care Act. I've fought against repeals. I've even sided with Democrats for the first time since 1994 to preserve the right to fight for the pre-existing conditions coverage in court. I've sided with Democrats time and again to preserve the pre-existing conditions. She's trying to scare you. I've kept my word, and I kept my word about the individual mandate too. I said the individual mandate was unconstitutional before I started running, and I kept my word on that, and I've kept my word about protecting the Affordable Care Act. I don't know what the big deal is. She wants to go for Medicare for all. She should just buy it and admit it to you folks and tell you she's going to tax the hell out of you to do it.
Congressman, I have been clear about my positions and consistent about my positions from the beginning. I know you really want people to believe otherwise, but that's just not the case. You voted to gut the Affordable Care Act. That's what that vote on the individual mandate was, and you need to own that. You need to be honest with voters about that. You say you stood up with Democrats to protect pre-existing conditions, but that's like the horse is out of the barn, you come back and close the barn door and put a padlock on it 3 days later, but you're the one who let the horse out of the barn in the first place. Voters understand. You don't give them enough credit, you don't show them enough respect, but they understand the games that you're playing. They know that you're not working to make healthcare more affordable, that you voted against a bipartisan bill to lower the cost of prescription drug prices, and they know that you take hundreds of thousands of dollars from big pharma and big insurance, and that means you are never going to be on our side.
Well, that's pretty amazing thing. She's now saying that somehow I'm corrupted by people who donate to my campaign. Like, she has billionaires from hedge funds that donate to her campaign. I don't care. Look at her record. Look at my record. There's no way I could be the thing she says I am, be the most bipartisan member of all of Congress. The bottom line is, I think my opponent should look into the camera. This is her last time to do it in this debate. She should look right in the camera, look right in the eyes, admit what's obvious. Medicare for all will cause a gigantic tax increase and will crush our economy. This is her last chance to admit it. I would ask her, just look in the camera and just admit it, because it's obvious, it's what it is. Biden said it is, and that's why he ain't buying it.
Let me start the next round with a direct question on that, because a lot of Americans do want a public option when it comes. They express it in public opinion polls all the time. They want some form of a public option when it comes to their health insurance and their health coverage. But not quite as many are on board with the proposal to expand Medicare to eventually everyone. So that's the question. Medicare is a great program. It's unanimously regarded as a great program for those 65 and older. But expanding it will be costly. How do you pay for it?
So There's a couple questions embedded in there, and let's take them all. Hopefully you'll give me time to do this. We are talking about expanding Medicare so that everybody has access. As you said, it's a very popular program, and it is the most efficient health insurance program in the world. I have been talking about expanding it in stages, starting with lowering the age of eligibility and offering the public option that you referred to, Dan. These are both things that Joe Biden supports, and I am looking forward to working with him to get them done. I also support extending Medicare to babies when they are born so that from day one of life, you are guaranteed health coverage. The fact of the matter is, the current plan that we have in place for healthcare is wildly more expensive than expanding Medicare to everybody will be. If we do this plan, we will save over $2 trillion on our national healthcare costs, and 95% of households will spend less on healthcare. 95%. The only people who will see healthcare costs go up are the top 5% of households. And I am okay with that.
And that's how you'd pay for it, a tax on the top 5%.
We are already paying for it. We are already spending more money on healthcare than this plan will cost.
So you plow savings into expansion of Medicare.
Yes, and we raise taxes on the wealthy and corporations.
Okay, Mr. Katko.
There's not enough money in the wealthy and corporations to pay for it, and Bernie Sanders acknowledged that, and that's why Joe Biden, I keep saying the same thing again, but it feels like we're beating our head against the wall here. Joe Biden called her plan preposterous. Joe Biden completely disagrees with her about putting everybody on Medicare for all. He does agree with lowering the age from 55 to 65, and he did that because he had to do that to get the progressive wing of the party to even think about backing him. The bottom line is, every study known to man would tell you that if you go with her plan, it's going to be a gigantic tax. Let me ask you, when's the last time the government got into any sort of business that the private sector once had and then saved you money? She said she's going to save you money, but she's not telling you that she's going to tax the heck out of you first, and then in the long run, you're going to save money. It sounds like a used car salesman, man. I'm telling you right now, there's no way that we can afford this as a country, especially coming out of a pandemic when businesses are hanging on by their fingernails and people are living paycheck to paycheck. And then they're going to open up their paycheck and say, oh my God, I just got a whole bunch more tax increase. That's not what we're about as a country. We can do better than this. We can have interstate competition for healthcare. We can have medical malpractice reform, and we can do all the things I said we can do. And lastly, I'll tell you, if you want to talk about scare tactic, the individual mandate, she says, was the end of pre-existing conditions. It was devastating, right? Well, guess what? We repealed the individual mandate in 2018, and guess what? We still have coverage for pre-existing conditions. So we're doing okay, and we can do better, and we will do better, but going to a government-run, taxing the heck out of this healthcare system is going to crush us.
The individual mandate damage will be complete when the Supreme Court overturns the ACA. That's happening a week after the election. We gotta, again, clear up some things here because the congressman is continuing to misrepresent my positions. And here's what the choice comes down to, folks. Let's be really clear about this. You can vote for John Katko, who is with Donald Trump, who is with the insurance industries, who is with the pharmaceutical industries, who has voted to gut the ACA, who has voted to keep our prescription drug costs high, who doesn't have a plan to make healthcare more affordable and more accessible for you. Or you can vote for me and Joe Biden, who have made centerpieces of our campaigns the effort to make healthcare more affordable for you. That means protecting coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. It means passing the bipartisan H.R. 3 bill to lower the cost of prescription drugs, starting with allowing Medicare to negotiate. And it means making sure that no one ever again has to forego care at the doctor or filling a prescription because it costs too much. Those are the choices in this election. It couldn't be clearer.
Mr. Katko, you get the last word if you want it on this.
Sure. I mean, listen, she's still not telling you. This is her absolute last chance. I'll see the rest of my time. Tell them that you have to raise taxes to pay for it.
Congressman, I am not going to say to the voters what you want me to say when it's not true.
Sure.
I am talking about a plan that will make healthcare less expensive for everybody. I am talking about a plan that will cut taxes on everybody making less than $400,000 a year. if you want to have an honest conversation about healthcare, I will show up every single time, but you are not being straight with voters. And you've got to be straight about this. We are in the middle of a global pandemic that is escalating because our president refuses to get it under control. People are going bankrupt because of healthcare costs. People cannot afford their medications. Kids are not getting to see the doctor. This is the most important issue in people's lives, and they deserve a champion who is going to fight for them.
Briefly, if the plan is too far left for Joe Biden, it's certainly too far left for this district. And Joe Biden has said her plan is too far left for him.
Joe Biden was not talking about my plan, and one of the reasons why Joe Biden endorsed me is because of my healthcare advocacy.
You take it to the break.
Thank you. I'll have my time back. And bottom line is Joe Biden said her plan was preposterous. Joe Biden is not for putting everybody on Medicare as soon as they're born. And Joe Biden said that that's too far left. And like I'll repeat, and we go to the break, I want you to chew on this. If it's too far left for Joe Biden, it's too far left for our district.
We're going to take that 60-second break now and come back to conclude our debate after this. We're back on our debate. Mr. Katko, speaking of the coronavirus itself, medically speaking, the pandemic, the spread of COVID-19, the epidemiology of the illness, if you will, what's the most important lesson the federal government should have learned from the pandemic?
Being prepared, no question about it. The president wasn't as prepared, the administration wasn't as prepared. The Obama administration didn't reinforce the stockpiles, neither did Trump. And in the state level, look what happened with Governor Cuomo. He generally did an okay job, but then he made a fatal mistake of sending people back to nursing homes that were infected with COVID through an executive order. There's mistakes that abound in this. There's no question about it. And being ready and moving forward is very important. That's why I did two things. I got a bill passed, I believe it passed the House, that mandates every agency in the government needs to be prepared if there's a second wave of the pandemic. And second of all, we need to have a 9/11 style commission. I teamed up as a member of the moderate wing of the Republican Party, the head of the moderate wing of the Republican Party, with Stephanie Murphy from the moderate wing of the Democratic Party, and we co-sponsored a bill that would have a 9/11 style commission to look at this right after it's over, depoliticize it completely, figure out what we can do better, what we did right, and learn from it and make sure it never happens again. Much like we did in Homeland Security, and we kept our country much safer since 9/11 because of that. We need to do the same thing now.
Thank you, Ms. Balter.
Sure.
Learning from it after it's over is an admirable goal, but it's not over, and it's nowhere near over. The fact of the matter is the pandemic is escalating. We had our highest number of cases in a single day just this past week. People are dying all over this country, more than 220,000 dead, more than 8 million sick. The lesson that we need to take from this is to take action. We need a national plan to deal with this. This cannot be left up to the states. It is not a state problem. It is a national problem. And we need a testing and tracing program. We need people to wear masks. We need vaccines and treatments that are safe and effective and equitably distributed. We have got to get this pandemic under control. It is the failure of the Trump administration to do that that has brought us to the point that we are. And again, the congressman endorses that man. This is a failure of leadership, it is a failure of judgment, and it is a failure of action.
And briefly, just, listen, I'm not trying to infer, and if I did, I apologize, I'm not trying to infer that this is over. Of course it's not over. And I'm so darn proud of what we've done here locally by teaming up with Ryan McMahon at the county executive and Ben Wallace and the others in the Cayuga, Wayne, and Oswego counties. We were constantly with each other, making sure we get the message out, and we were united in our message that listen to the rules, listen to what the Center for Disease Control is saying, listen to what the state is telling us to do, and work together, and we've done that. And I've delivered money to the front lines, $100 million to the hospital, $1,200 to individuals to help them get through this tough time, billions and billions of dollars for testing and tracing, and money for our businesses to stay afloat. We've done a wonderful job, and we're in the midst of having another package that's going to cross the line very soon after the election. That's going to be molded after the Problem Solvers Caucus package that I helped write. So I know it's not over, and I know that we got to stay the course. We have to wear our masks, and we have to listen to the experts, and certainly not the politicians, and do what they tell us to do, and do it right, and we're going to get through this together. It shouldn't be about fearing everybody to death. It should be about being united and saying we as a team can work together. I'm not casting stones at the governor. He made a huge mistake, but overall he did okay. And I think he did a better job probably than Trump did overall with the pandemic. But the bottom line is we got to work together. And we can't just fire darts and criticize everybody, because that doesn't get you anywhere. We'll get through this like any other crisis we've ever had when we work together as a team and not just throw bombs from the other side.
Well, Ms. Balter, you both seem to agree there needs to be a national plan to do it better next time. But there are also many who will argue that the next Congress may need to be prepared to go into deficit spending on this issue alone to bridge America's economy through the rest of this pandemic and beyond. Do you agree that it's that significant that we should add to our deficit in large amounts? And where should the bulk of the federal spending be targeted to help our citizens get through this?
So let's be clear, it's not a matter of a national plan for next time. It's a matter of a national plan for this time. Okay. We still don't have one, and that is the problem with the current leadership. And Congressman Katko has stood in the way of the aid that we need. The local electeds, including Mayor Walsh, have criticized him for that. And we have to get serious right now. Yes, the next Congress is going to have to approve deficit spending in the time of a crisis like this, both a health crisis that is still rampaging across our country and a financial crisis where we've got still more than 12 million people out of work, more than 100,000 small businesses closed. Now is not the time to be worrying about deficit. Now is the time for our government to invest in our communities. And in addition to direct aid to governments and extended unemployment and food support and protective equipment and all of the things that are in the bill the congressman voted against, we also need to make major investments in infrastructure and renewable energy. That is how, on the other side of this crisis, we are going to work to lift the economy back up, to get families, households, businesses, and the entire economy back up on its feet. And I believe Central and Western New Yorkers can be leaders in that effort.
Mr. Katko?
Yeah, of course, the deficit is hugely important. And every dollar we spend now, our children and our children's children are going to be paying the ticket. So I don't think you can cavalierly and flippantly say it doesn't matter. Well, of course it matters. And every dollar we spend, we have to think hard about. But there's not an economist out there who says we don't need to do more to get us through this pandemic. And if we don't spend the money now, it'll cost us that much more later. But think about that. We have to spend the money on an infrastructure package, which I agree with my opponent. We got to do that. And I wrote the Problem Solvers Caucus proposal for an infrastructure project, and it's serving as a backbone of things they're contemplating on my Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And we're going to get a package, I'm quite certain of that, a highway bill as well, that we'll get. But the bottom line is, going forward, we've got to think about, not only do we have to spend this money now, are we going to then increase the taxes like they want to do, and then come up with this gigantic Medicare for all plan like she wants, that's going to cripple businesses and crater the economy? And what's that going to do? It's going to cause the deficit to go from here to here, because you don't have the tax generators, because the economy's in the toilet. And that's what I'm concerned about.
Well, I want to go ahead briefly, please.
Yes. So first of all, Congressman voted against this year's infrastructure package, which was really important for Central and Western New York. No one is being cavalier about the deficit. I don't appreciate the suggestion. I take these things very, very seriously. But this is exactly why the congressman's vote on the tax bill in 2017 was so reckless, because he added $2 trillion, not to our deficit, but to our national debt, which is out of control. That kind of bill is not what we need. And the person who has the judgment to cast that vote is not the right person to help us build the economic policy that's going to help us recover from the worst economy that we have had since the Great Depression.
I'd like you to respond to that before I move on.
Sure. The bottom line is, that tax reform bill, by all accounts, helped the economy grow to a tremendous amount. And if we didn't do it, I shudder to think where we'd be economically, and where we would be from a budgetary standpoint as well. The professor, again, is using her statistics to try and gobble up the thing. The bottom line is we had the greatest growth rate in our economy in decades, and the lowest unemployment in the history of our country for African Americans, Hispanics, and women. How is that a bad thing?
Final question, you've only got 45 seconds each to answer. Joe Biden this week said we need to transition away from the oil industry. Mr. Katko, can we do that? Clean energy instead of fossil fuels without a huge economic and political, how fast can we get there?
If we could wave a wand today and say no more fossil fuels, no more carbon emissions, I'd love it, okay? That's why I think it's so important we understand that the bridge to the future, renewables aren't ready to stand on their own yet, but we need to do everything we can to support them. And I've supported shifting research dollars from fossil fuel research to renewable research. I've also been a big champion of nuclear industry because it's 100% carbon-free emissions. And I definitely think we should do everything we can to prioritize green technology. But when you talk about the Green New Deal, and what Joe Biden was saying is getting rid of fracking and getting rid of the things that are helping us as the bridge to the future, absolutely it would crush us as an economy, and it can't happen. So I am all about green technology, all about shifting priorities to renewables, but we're not there yet. So let's use it to be smart, like with nuclear technology, for example, to help use that as a bridge to the future.
Thank you. Ms. Balter.
So I've talked about it before. I support major investments in renewable energy. I support providing the support necessary to keep our nuclear industry thriving as we get off of fossil fuels. The congressman, I think, is trying to intimate that I support the Green New Deal. I don't. I support aggressive policy to address the climate crisis, which the congressman has not done in his 6 years in office. In fact, he's taken us backwards, supporting pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord, helping Donald Trump roll back necessary environmental protections. All of that has made us less safe and put our climate in greater peril. We have to change course. We need to make major investments. That is also how we are going to bring back our economy. And again, this is a place where we can't really trust the congressman to do what's best for us because he's taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from the oil and gas industry.
Your time is up, and it's up because we've given each of our candidates 90 seconds to make their closing arguments to you, the voters. And our first closing statement will come from Congressman John Katko.
7 years ago, my wife and I made a very difficult decision to quit a job I love and to go to Congress. And I did that because I had a burning desire to show that working together and making bipartisanship cool again is something I really wanted to do. I was informed by the relationship between Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan, diametrically opposed on a political spectrum, but they sat down together time and again to work out deals like Social Security reform, immigration reform, tax reform, and tax cuts. It was a tough relationship they had, but they got big things done. And I really believe in that. And that's why I went to Congress, and I continue to rise up the ranks of bipartisanship to now be more bipartisan ranked than every single every single Democrat and all but one Republican. And that's what the major news outlets have cited in endorsing me yet again for Congress over my opponent. They said, and I quote, they said that we need members like John Katko in Congress to maintain a fragile center as we come out of this dark time. And I'm very proud of that, what they said about that, because it's exactly why I went in there. And that's exactly why my wife and I are willing to sacrifice so much to keep working for all of you. I have no qualms about my opponent. I have an immense amount of respect for her intellect and an immense amount of respect for where she is in the political spectrum. But I, like the news outlets say, she's just too far left for this district. And I'd be honored with your vote for another term. And I won't let you down. I'll continue to work across the aisle and do everything I can to help all of you. I don't care if you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent. I will work for all of you, and I love you all. God bless you.
Thank you. Ms. Balter, your closing statement.
Thank you, Dan. The stakes of this election couldn't be higher. We are facing the worst health crisis in 100 years, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, a climate crisis that literally has our country on fire, and a racial justice crisis that we are generations past due in addressing. And at the top, we have a president who's making it all worse. He is stoking hatred and fear. He refuses to get the spread of this virus under control. He is the most dangerous and corrupt president of our lifetimes, and John Katko endorses him. And now John Katko is running a Trump-style campaign full of lies and fear. We get enough of it from our president. We don't need it from our congressmen, too. What we need is a leader who is going to step up and bring people together instead of tearing us apart. A leader who understands the challenges that we face. That's why I was the first House candidate in the entire country to be endorsed by Joe Biden, a man who knows our region. He lived here, worked here, got married here. He knows I will be the champion that Central and Western New Yorkers need, because you need someone to fight for you to make your life just a little bit easier, so you can afford to take your kid to the doctor and fill your parents' prescriptions. I will go to Congress and always put Central and Western New Yorkers first. I hope that you honor me with your support and your vote, because together we can bring America back.
Thank you both, and mostly thank you to the voters who will make this decision between now and, well, who knows when they'll stop counting the ballots, sometime weeks from now perhaps. But if you're registered in the 24th Congressional District, all of Onondaga, all of Cayuga, all of Wayne, and that western half roughly of Oswego County, including the cities of Oswego and Fulton, it's your responsibility to get out and vote and make a decision this year. On behalf of everybody at News Channel 9, I want to thank you for tuning into our debate. Have a great time between now and Election Day, and God bless America. Stay healthy, everybody.